West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And I'll ask again, where is President Trump? Well, he spent the morning denying reality and spewing false information on his favorite TV network, Fox News.
The whole world is watching, and nobody can believe what they're saying. And you have leaders of countries that call me and say, that's the most messed up election we've ever seen.
With me now to talk more about this nearly hour-long, rambling, delusional Trump interview is journalist Carl Bernstein, a CNN political analyst, and Brian Stelter, CNN's chief media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources. Welcome to you both. Carl, let me start with you and get your reaction to what you heard from the president today, who is unable and unwilling to face reality.
It's delusional. It's ranting. It's consistent with what people in the White House are telling me and others about his state of mind at the present and going back for a while, which is anything but stable in their view. But I think we need to look at another deeper question. You just started this by saying his favorite network about Fox. Interestingly, Fox is no longer his favorite network.
That's
and
true.
The reason is that even Fox has been reporting some of the reality of Trump's own unreality. And so all of his war on the truth, which has been the hallmark and the most basic aspect, his lying of his presidency, has now even been noted by Fox News. And what has he done? He has left Fox News, except for this one favored anchor of his, who conducted this incredibly delusional interview. But Trump said one interesting thing, and I'm going to quote Donald Trump. He said, "We don't have freedom of the press in this country. We have suppression of the press. You can't have a scandal if no one reports it." The fact is, the scandal is being reported. It's being reported all over, including even occasionally by Fox News. And that scandal is the presidency, sensibility, mindset, lying, con job of Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States. That's the reality that he has met with a war on the truth for 4 years that has been very successful.
You talk about this favorite news anchor for President Trump, Fox host Maria Bartiromo. There's a reason for that, because as we saw during this interview, she wasn't pushing back at all against any of the president's false claims, disinformation. I mean, they were basically flat out lies, Brian. And she also agreed with pretty much everything President Trump said, and even at times encouraged him. Is Fox News complicit in spreading false and misleading information by giving the president this kind of platform? And let's talk also about Maria Bartiromo, because I used to watch her when she was doing business news, and she had a pretty good reputation.
Yes, she was an acclaimed journalist. She knew how to ask all the right follow-up questions, but she's given up on all those skills. She still has them probably somewhere, but doesn't use them when she's interviewing Trump. She did not ask the necessary follow-up questions. in response to the president's lies. And she took his claims very seriously, even though they make no sense. Look, delusion is the word. Sadly, it's a very it's an ugly word, but this is an ugly moment where Trump is backsliding. Rather than starting to get to the 5 stages of grief, he's actually backsliding, digging in deeper. And I think we have to ask, why is that? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the audience. Carl's right that parts of Fox News are reporting the news, are moving on, covering the Biden transition. But there are these popular talk shows on Fox that still perform for the president. They are sycophants for the president. And those are the highest rated shows, by far, on Fox News. That indicates to me that the hard right base, the Trump base, wants the propaganda. They want the lies. They want to believe the election is not over. They want to believe in voter fraud and all these other crazy things that have been blasted out of courts from coast to coast. They want to believe, and Trump wants them to believe. So I think what he's doing is putting on a show for an audience that wants to be told they didn't lose. And obviously he can't come to grips with the term loser, but there's an audience out there that wants to believe these lies. And that's probably the deeper issue that the country has to grapple with, and frankly, that the Biden transition team has to grapple with.
Yeah, Carl, about the only brief moments of clarity, really, during the rambling interview came when the president admitted that he may not have a legal path to overturning the election. He and his lawyers had suffered losses, dozens of them, over 30 we've counted in court, and he admitted that his court cases may not reach the Supreme Court. Here he is talking about that.
Can you imagine? Donald Trump, President of the United States, files a case, and I probably can't get a case, and we have tremendous proof. We have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits, sworn affidavits, and it's very hard to get a case to the Supreme Court.
Is there a path to victory? Dominion.
Yeah, I hope so.
The fact that they're even talking about, is there a path to victory when it's clearly over, Carl? We have a president who refuses to concede, and his ardent supporters who believe that this election was rigged. Just big picture here, Carl. What does this do to our democracy and to the fact that this country every 4 years or every couple of years carries out free and fair elections?
Look, Donald Trump has undermined our democratic institutions, and especially our free electoral system, the election, and particularly the President of the United States, which is absolutely the bedrock of our democracy, and he has undermined it. But I think we need a wider lens on all of this discussion of untruth. If it were up to me, I don't even think I would have run the clip that we just put up on the air, because once again, it furthers his lies and gives them voice when we know what he's saying is not true. But there's a much larger question here. We have been what was a cold civil war, a cold cultural civil war in this country that's gone on for 15, 20, 25 years. Donald Trump has brought it to the point of ignition, poured fuel on the fire, and we now are in a conflagration. But in looking at that, we have to acknowledge that going back to the beginnings of talk radio, particularly right-wing talk radio, that there has been increasingly disinterest in the best obtainable version of the truth, which really is what good reporting, good journalism is. And as Brian has suggested, people, and this is not limited to Donald Trump supporters, people increasingly over the last 20, 25 years have been looking for information in the media that reinforces what they already believe, rather than looking and being open to the best obtainable version of the truth. And what has happened in the Trump presidency is that this has been taken by his acolytes and supporters to a point where the mentality, the repertorial mentality even of supermarket tabloids has come, not just Murdochism, but absolutely wildly insane, total untruth has come to be the dominant media message for those people who follow Donald Trump and are his base. And that's the situation that we're left in. And what we in the press need to start looking at is there a way that we can somehow open up for all the people of America, once again, a willingness to look at and accept the best obtainable version of the truth. And in the era of social media and the divide that Trump has so skillfully exploited, I'm not sure that how possible it is that we can change this horrible war on truth, which always, truth is the first casualty of war. And that is what Donald Trump has done.
Very scary times. Brian, what can we expect, you think, the next couple of months up until Inauguration Day, especially knowing, what President Trump has done to delay the transition? And we know in the past, foreign adversaries have taken advantage of this vulnerable time of transition, knowing that America is preoccupied, especially right now.
Right. We're going to see more announcements by Biden, more pouting by Trump, more calls to friendly outlets in order to advance this narrative. It's partly about a grift. It's partly about fundraising. He wants to raise money in order to pay off campaign debts and be able to build maybe a new media apparatus in the coming year. Judging by the number of fundraising emails Trump is sending out, it's not going very well. They're getting more and more and more desperate. But here's one thing I am struck by, and this may sound a little more positive. If you would imagine 3 weeks after Trump wouldn't admit defeat, what do you think was going to happen? Would there be rallies? Would there be unrest? Would Trump supporters be out there in MAGA caravans and on boat tours, riding across the country, shutting down highways, the way we saw right before Election Day? We've not seen that. I actually think even many Trump voters are over it. They're tired. They're done. They want to move on. They might say in polls that they believe the election was rigged. But do they really believe it, or are they just supporting the person they voted for? I actually think the lack of popular interest and protests and rallies and marches and caravans, it signals to me that even if people are buying some of what Trump is selling, they're not that interested anymore.
It is Monday, the 30th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunnar the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, this is the day that we repurpose all that's been left over from the weekend into a lovely gourmet dish on Mondays. Now, of course, you know we are talking about the news. In terms of real sustenance, there are no more leftovers from Thanksgiving. In fact, I'm of the belief that 3 days is about the max. Okay? So we pretty much finished everything on Saturday. Only had a duck. So there wasn't as much in terms of what a turkey would have provided. So the duck was good. Yes, I did a balsamic, honey, lemon. A little basting job there, and it crackled the skin just the right amount. Now, we had invited my Trump bro, my youngest brother. Well, he's the baby in the family. And my only brother, by the way, for dinner, because my sister had her allowed 6 at her house. We were limited to only 6 in a party here in the state of Oregon. Now, I know a lot of people broke that law. It's not as if the cops are going to be breaking down your door to give you a ticket for violating it. In fact, the Oath Keeper type sheriffs in my neck of the woods have already said they're not going to enforce that law. Yeah, they're not going to enforce that one. But anyway, I invited my Trump voting brother. And now we've had an agreement. When Trump first got elected, I tried explaining to my brother what a mandate was. That certainly, Trump won the Electoral College. As dubious as it is, he did win it, so we have to accept that. But in terms of mandate, Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, almost 3 million. I love how people like Glenn Greenwald, we'll get into him in just a bit here, cites Hillary as like losing. She got almost 3 million more votes, so please. But when I tried to explain to my brother what a mandate is, and you got to understand, he's a full-grown man. I mean, 60 years old now, so, he looks good, I got to say. But you would think that maybe he'd understand or have, in his mind what mandate is defined as, but I don't think he's ever really used it in a sentence. Anyway, because he didn't understand what a mandate was, he started going off like, "Are you saying that Trump lost?" I'm saying, well, he lost the popular vote. He won the electoral vote. Okay, so he won the electoral vote. I got that. That's what determines it. He's installed as the president, but he doesn't have a mandate. Well, of course, Trump never acted as if he didn't have a mandate because he won. He's the president and we're not. And he put it in our face every single day. And he's putting it in our face right now. So now I will hand it to my brother. He did take down his cult MAGA flags, the Trump Pence 2020 flags, the giant ones. I'm not talking about a tiny little flag. We're talking about giant flags, not the little ones that you could fly in a truck, like you see when you'd see those ISIS caravans of Trump supporters. No, even bigger than that. And he had all of the cultic talismans to wave and let everybody see. Almost like a threat. Well, I will hand it to him. He took all those down. He went through his Facebook posts and deleted all those posts. But now he's into this. I wouldn't call it COVID denying, but lessening what COVID is doing. And one of these stupid conspiracy theories that I just hate. And I'll tell you why I hate it is because our sister is a nurse. So my brother started telling my mom the reason that COVID cases are so high, which they're not, but we'll just go with what he says. The reason they're so high is because doctors and nurses and hospitals are getting kickbacks for increasing the amount of COVID cases on their reports. And I told him that's not true. and he, being the bully aggressor that he is, immediately got up. And I haven't got, I'm trying to get the food on the table because I don't need to take this shit. And he started to storm out. I said, come on, man. We were just having a slight disagreement. Well, I shouldn't get into like personal family business, but I suspect that because I had a certain level of accomplishment growing up through school, sports, student government, out in the real world in government, being a supervisor for a major oil company in exploration and production, being the team captain on the fire suppression team for the oil company out in the field, any number of things, publishing poetry and short stories, acting a little bit. No, I know my brother went way further in acting than I did. I didn't want to be on the Gong Show. Okay, I didn't want to be in production on the Gong Show. That's not. I never thought that would be my avenue to fame, or at least what I considered to be important. There was something a little bit more there. In fact, the only reason I got into acting is so I could learn how to write plays. It just helped. Or just even writing dialogue. Anyway, I think that my brother had a bit of issue with that. Now, he would have been a great athlete. He's big. I mean, he'll make Schwarzenegger look small. About 6'3". Even now, now he's probably about 210, 220 or so. He's cut, even at the age of 60. He's in pretty damn good shape. Good looking, very good looking. So, he got to make a bunch of money and get a SAG pension for being a bailiff on one of these daytime courtroom reality TV drama things. Which is weird because, if they have writers, I don't know how much there is in terms of reality, but that's where we are. So I think that he has an issue with me laying down the law because I'm the older brother and therefore the baby brother has to take exception and yada, 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 yada. So when I went off to college, I have to admit, he was just a little guy. And when I came back, it seemed like it was only months too. He went from a little guy to a big guy just almost overnight. And he tended to not be so scholastically motivated, shall we say. And so one of the first things, as I said, that he could have been a great athlete, but he couldn't be coached. You just could not coach him. You couldn't tell him what to do. You couldn't even ask him how to do. You couldn't ask him to do it. You couldn't be nice. You couldn't be forceful. There was just no way. he would have been a great athlete. He played baseball, and he had an arm. He was a catcher, big guy, being able to block the plate, smack the ball really good. He had an arm, the kind that you could hear the ball ripping the air when he threw it from the outfield. Even as a little kid in Little League. I was an umpire in Little League, and I'd oftentimes have to umpire his games. But I was actually quite amazed at his arm, even when he was a little kid. But he just could not be coached. So one of the first things he did when I went off to college was to take my letterman's jacket. Now, I was what was known as an Iron Man in high school because I got 5 varsity letters, and which means that you got to double up a sport somewhere in there. And so I thought, well, heck, I'll try to double up cross country and football. Not easy to do. It's not. Nope. Not easy to do. I tried to even wrestle and play basketball. Those are 2 different ones also. It's hard to do. Can't do it. Different muscle groups, and it's hard. But anyway, he took my letterman's jacket, took the letters off, all of my medals from my track competitions and whatnot, and tore the sleeves off so he'd have like a sleeveless letterman's jacket to ride around on his Harley. In high school. He had a Harley in high school. How my parents allowed that, I don't know. But he's the baby in the family, and you know how the babies in the family get everything. So, he never wanted for anything. Pretty much allowed to do anything he wanted. And when he left, he was calling me a loser. Now, I know that there's a bit of an issue involved there, but, I hear that a lot, and it's not as if I haven't dealt with being a loser a long time ago, really. I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here. When you're a writer and you're actively sending things out to be published, the success rate is very low. I mean, you're lucky to get 1 article published out of 10 that you send out. You're lucky if that's the case. And I always thought, well, I'm not doing too bad. I mean, it's almost like baseball. I mean, you go up to bat. If you have like a 270 batting average, a lot of people think that's pretty good. Yeah, you're hitting the ball less than 3 times out of 10. So I've dealt with what it is to be a loser. I didn't write and haven't yet the Great American Novel and any other types of things that I might consider to be a success. So, I've considered that, dealt with it. I'm okay. I'm 65 now. I don't really feel like I have to prove anything. I'm just going to do the work. So, I might have made a bit of a tactical error because, people always hate hearing the truth. And I called my brother a bully because he is. He gets his way because he's overbearing and aggressive. And, when he says, I'm going to kick your ass, well, he probably could. He was a heavyweight Golden Gloves competitor. And, he's good with his hands. But I'm not without some skills myself. I'm not as big as he is. But, once you get to be 6'1" and, over 210, 215 pounds, you pack a little bit. You do. So I've never really been fearful of someone, even the big guy saying, I'm going to kick your ass. I've been a bouncer. You try to talk them down, and one of the ways that I found of pretty much mitigating these things is, not giving in to it, not being apologetic or whatnot. I mean, whatever the situation requires, of course, you should do. So it made for I wouldn't call it stressful, but I just hated it. One cannot disagree and then sit down and have a meal. I mean, I thought that's how we grew up as a family, but apparently he didn't like that. So it got back to me that, he doesn't want to hear anything from me because he doesn't respect me. Okay, well, that's fine. My brother went out and, without a high school education, he dropped out of high school because he got kicked out of high school. He was incorrigible, bordering on a delinquent, and went to continuation of high school, dropped out, went out and had 1,000 kids from 3 or 4 different women, so that's a success, right? But I will hand it to him. He went out and made a bunch of money so he could support his kids. None of them want his last name, but that's another story. So, yeah, he became a multimillionaire, having a couple of, or several used car dealerships and the second largest wholesale auction in Southern California for autos. Lots of detail shops, concessions for that. So he was rolling in the dough so much that he lived in one of those mega mansions at the top of the Yorba Linda Hills. I think maybe those were the ones that burned down. But and then at the age of 50, he decided he was going to do something else. And at the encouragement of somebody from his gym, he started making the rounds to be an actor. He got his book together, and I will say my dad paid for that. I don't know why a multimillionaire couldn't, but maybe he was low on funds then. Anyway, he got his book together, and since he's a good-looking guy, rugged, he gets these jobs, and he got a regular gig on one of these court TV shows, daytime court TV shows, as a bailiff. Because he also has aspired to be a cop. He went through the academy, but he wasn't a cop. That. Anyway, he has this sort of aggressive attitude that you see sometimes in cops, and I've known a lot of cops. I've been friends with cops, and I have mentioned before that I don't party with cops. I made the bad mistake of partying with cops in my 20s, and that was the most violent, drunken, it was ridiculous. I mean, more property broken and people beat up at a cop party than any other party I'd ever been to. So I made, I went to 2 cop parties and decided I'm not ever going to a cop party again. These things are out of control. So my brother believes that if he can put on his cop voice, the authoritarian voice, that people will just wilt. Well, I don't wilt. I mean, I know how to put on the voice. I know how to instill my authority if I want. But one thing I will not do is back down. And in this situation, my brother is selling this idea to my mom that COVID isn't that serious because doctors and nurses are taking kickbacks to inflate the numbers. And that offended me because he was disrespecting our sister, who is an angel. People don't get into that field for the money. The unfortunate aspect about arguing with people on the other side is they have no idea what it is to be in service to another person. If there's not money involved, you're a loser. Many of my choices in life did not revolve around whether I was going to make money at it. This radio station might be one of them. We continue to do it, and we're not making any money. In fact, it's at the point where if we didn't dig into our own wallets and have help from people like you out there, it'd be damn difficult to do because we wouldn't be able to do it just from pulling it out of our own wallets. But my brother is of the mind that if you do that, pull money out of your own wallet to sustain something, you're a loser. Because everything is predicated upon money and how much money. And it doesn't matter how you get the money, just that you have the money. And that has never been important to me. I'm not going to get money and by any means necessary. I'm not going to rob a bank. I'm going to go get a job, and that's what I've done my whole life. I've never collected unemployment. I've never taken handouts. Family money isn't really released, let me tell you. Though my brother got some pretty good sweetheart deals that he never paid back. I wonder how that works. Oh, he's the baby in the family. So the amount of grievance, and I will say white man grievance, from a guy who's got a bunch of money, when I hear that Trump appeals to, the poor, uneducated white, I think he appeals to the rich, uneducated white, too. I think he does. So, my brother left screaming at the top of his voice out for the whole neighborhood to see. Come out here, I want to kick your ass. Well, I just told him, I didn't scream. I said, hey, if you want to kick my ass, make an effort and come back in here and kick my ass. So he left. So I guess we're going to have another break here like we've had before. But it was just a little bit disconcerting because I will not stand by and have someone spread these lies. Doctors and nurses are not getting a kickback. They're just not. Medicare allows a 20% increase in what they charge because of the amount of work and material involved in treating this disease. That's not a kickback. That's not encouraging the numbers to be inflated. They are what they are. So we also have to put up with this BS in the region about this. Even though the numbers are going through the roof, people are convinced that it's all a lie. Is it? Would the National Football League actually cancel games and move them around if this was fake? Do you know, would they be playing to empty stadiums if this was all fake? People are on those teams and in those managements of those teams are getting this disease and they are dying. But it's all one big vast conspiracy. One big vast one. Speaking of conspiracies, and wow, I'm really going on. But hey, it's a day back from a holiday. Got into it with Glenn Greenwald this morning, too. Hey, he responded. He called me an anonymous nobody. Yeah, well, I'm not anonymous. I'm a nobody, but I'm not anonymous. In fact, he responded to me at Justice Putnam on Twitter saying, what's your name? You just used it, idiot. I guess people think that I've made it up. I've never, and I purposely have not changed my name. When I was playing rock and roll, I went by Justice. That's a ready-made theatrical name, but it's my name, okay? And I've never not gone by my last name because I want to honor my father, our father in my family, who is in the who's who of renowned historians, I should add, who got a Stanford PhD at the age of 22. Who does that? Well, child prodigies, that's who. So I wanted to honor his scholarship. I wanted someone to say, oh, are you related to the historian Jackson K. Putnam? And I would say yes. So Glenn thinks I made up my name. Well, Glenn, look, he was out there getting all bent out of shape because Neera Tanden has been is now going to be part of Biden's team. And oh my God, are the Glenn Greenwalds of the world so upset. Yeah, Biden is just the worst that could ever happen to this country after 4 effing years of Trump. I'm so over it. So Greenwald's argument is that Neera floated this lie that Vlad and the Russians changed votes. Well, what she said is that why would Russia be hacking our elections unless they wanted to change the votes? Whether they were successful or not is something else. They did influence our elections. There is consideration that some votes were actually flipped. But we had to live with it. Okay? So Neera Tanden was not responsible for Trump being elected. How is that possible? She mentioned these things after he was installed by Vlad. So, I made my little retort to Glenn Greenwald, and, he's got, a couple of million followers, so he's a big man. Big man in Brazil living on that mountaintop that is $1 million income from The Intercept paid for. I guess money goes a long way in Brazil, maybe, huh? That's a pretty established and involved digs that he lives in Brazil on a mountaintop. So, I triggered Glenn Greenwald. Justice will do that to you. Justice will. No pun intended. Well, we better get in with what's on the rest of the show here. I could fill in the whole hour here with just me going off on what happened over this long holiday weekend. So what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe as we start off here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? At the top, well, that was Trump admitting that it's pretty darn hard to get to the Supreme Court, even as his legal gambits are pretty much drying up. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, GOP lawmakers around the country are refusing to follow rules about masks. That's why I get so mad when people like my brother tell my mother lies. No one wants to show up for jury duty in the middle of a pandemic. No one. Who wants to sit in a jury in a courtroom during the pandemic? Who? And inequality is baked into virus testing that most people cannot afford. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Polish police tear-gassed a member of parliament during the abortion ban protests because showing her legislator ID was deemed a threat. It always is. And after the killing of an Iranian nuclear scientist, the Kushner team are headed to Saudi Arabia and Qatar this week. Is that a coincidence? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Burned up so much time on that elongated rant. Well, a rant that was elongated because of the complexities and length of this holiday weekend. We're going to forego the usuals, and the usuals are where you can find us on social media and the usual plea for money because, hey, we have to pay our bills. We're going to forego that because you know where to find us and you know how to get us money. So thank you for your generosity and all that. We're going to dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and it comes our way by the American Independent from the Associated Press. Many Republican lawmakers in states where coronavirus cases and hospitalizations have surged are not only rejecting statewide mask mandates, they're also resisting rules requiring them in their own capitals. This is how the brainwashing works. When people say, oh, brainwashing doesn't work, this is brainwashing in its, complete efficacy. Efforts to require lawmakers and staff to wear masks have received a cool reception, even in state houses that have seen outbreaks of the virus or where Republican governors have issued statewide mandates. It is echoing a partisan divide nationwide over a simple step that health experts say is proven to help keep others safe. We're supposed to be modeling for our constituents and for our residents in our state, said Arkansas State Senator Stephanie Flowers, a Democrat in the majority Republican legislature, who proposed a rule requiring senators to wear a mask or risk losing their per diem payments. You've got a governor asking everyone to wear a mask and socially distance. It's not like I'm asking for something nobody has heard of. Many legislators are still planning and drafting rules for their 2021 legislative sessions, while 4 chambers approved rules requiring masks for sessions this year, according to the National Conference of State Legislators. Nearly 200 legislators nationwide have tested positive for the virus, and 4 have died from COVID-19 since the pandemic began. After at least 4 dozen Mississippi lawmakers tested positive in the largest outbreak in a legislature, masks were encouraged but not required for those lawmakers. Missouri's legislature postponed a special session focused on virus relief after a COVID-19 outbreak among lawmakers, and a Tennessee lawmaker said she was not able to spend Thanksgiving with her mother after attending a hearing with legislators who were not wearing masks. Health experts warn the public is taking their cue from elected officials at a time those officials are trying to restrict or discourage indoor gatherings that are fueling a rapid rise in cases. Legislators have taken steps to try to limit the virus, with some allowing remote voting and others meeting in large venues to allow more spacing. Arkansas's House, for example, met in a basketball arena for 2 sessions last spring, but will return to the capital next year. 12 Arkansas lawmakers have tested positive for the virus over the past month, the second largest known outbreak in a state legislature. The latest outbreak began after lawmakers convened at the Capitol for budget hearings last week. The budget panel had adopted a mask rule that did not require lawmakers to wear them when speaking into a microphone, drinking, or if they were at least 6 feet away from other people. All three of these offerings here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy are by the Associated Press out of the American Independent. Jury duty notices have set Nicholas Philbrook's home on edge with worries about him contracting the coronavirus and passing it on to his father-in-law, a cancer survivor with diabetes in his mid-70s who is at higher risk of developing complications from COVID-19. Philbrook and his wife, Heather Schmidt of Camarillo, California, have been trying to convince court officials that they should be excused from jury duty because her father lives with them. But court officials told them that is not a valid reason and he must appear in court next month. My main concern is you still have to go into a building. You still have to be around a set number of people, said Philbrook, age 39, a marketing company editor. In an enclosed space, how safe are you? It just doesn't feel like a right time still to be doing this kind of stuff on a normal basis. People across the country have similar concerns amid resurgences of the virus, a fact that has derailed plans to resume jury trials in many courthouses for the first time since the pandemic started. Within the past month, courts in Hartford, Connecticut, San Diego, and Norfolk, Virginia have had to delay jury selection for trials because too few people responded to jury duty summonses. The non-response rates are much higher now than they were before the pandemic, court officials say. Judges in New York City, Indiana, Colorado, and Missouri declared mistrials recently because people connected to the trials either tested positive for the virus or had symptoms. A case in federal court in Hartford, Connecticut offers a glimpse of how the virus can upend proceedings. In October, 150 people were summoned for jury duty for the trial of Amber Foley, who is fighting child pornography charges and demanding her constitutional right to a speedy trial. It would be the first criminal trial in Connecticut in state or federal court since the pandemic began. Only about half the potential jurors showed up, and many others were excused for various reasons, including concerns about COVID-19. Only 19 people were left, short of the 31 people estimated to be needed to pick a jury of 12 and one alternate juror. And then, 2 court security officers tested positive for the virus, forcing the temporary closure of the courthouse for cleaning and prompting Judge Vanessa Bryant's law clerk to go into isolation and get tested because of contact with the officers. Bryant decided last week to postpone Foley's jury selection until mid-January. Like judges in other parts of the country, she ruled the interests of public health outweigh those of a speedy trial. as I mentioned earlier, this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy also comes out of the Associated Press by way of the American Independent. Now, pop-up clinics provide fast virus tests, but it seems that many people cannot afford to pay for them. Who knew? The day after Amanda Serlanek found out she might have been exposed to the coronavirus, she visited a rapid testing center in New Jersey but was turned away because they ran out of tests. She returned at 7 a.m. the next day. After she waited for an hour, officials said they had run out of tests again. On her third try, Serlanek and her friend called several testing centers before driving for an hour to one with availability. Lines for free COVID-19 tests stretch for blocks or hours in cities where people feel the dual strain of the surge and the approaching holidays, but an increasing number of pop-up clinics promise visitors instant results at a cost. Some charge $150 or more for a spot at the front of the queue. While her friend who lacked insurance had to pay $125 for the test, Serlanek's price was only $35. The real cost came for the 2 days she had to take off from work, she said. People are just trying to get by, and they can't be taking off work for a week to wait for results, she said, and she works at a spa. Well, it's good that she's staying away then. People need rapid testing to be available and affordable. Well, only if there was some sort of bill in Congress that Moscow Mitch has been holding up since March. If only there was. Well, that brings us to our break, and we're going to have a very short break. And when we get back, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Shadows of Mandalay. There have been about half a dozen film versions of Daphne du Maurier's 1938 English Gothic romance, Rebecca, in which a domestic worker falls in love with and marries rich, lonely widower Maxim de Winter and settles into his ultra-lavish estate of Mandalay, only to find herself living and loving under the oppressively deep shadow of his deceased wife, the amazing, the admired, the worshipped Rebecca. Like I said, about half a dozen films, but most people think of Alfred Hitchcock's 1940 version, starring no one special, just Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier. And if you don't think of it, that's another way your previous life choices have failed you. Which leads us to the question, how in the world can director Ben Wheatley, or anyone for that matter, follow Hitchcock's Rebecca? Well, first, gone is Fontaine's languid, ethereal recitation of the novel's famous first line, "Last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again." Instead, Lily James busts out an almost matter-of-fact tone, setting up right there the pace of the movie, which is fast. Not me talking fast, but Wheatley and editor Jonathan Amos have a story to tell and they keep things moving. Also, where Hitchcock shot in moody, apprehensive black and white, Wheatley and cinematographer Laurie Rose fill up their filmic canvas with luscious color that highlights motifs of water and flowering plants, color that lets Wheatley and costumer Julian Day indulge in an unabashed impressionistic costume design. Why is Armie Hammer introduced in that gold suit? 'Cause De Winter is the treasure to be won. Speaking of changes, De Winter is supposed to be 40-ish and our heroine 20-ish, but Hammer and James appear about the same age. That's because Wheatley says he is done with movies where older men bed gals as young as their daughters. Good call. Story still works. Good for him. And good for all of them. I don't know what Hitchcock would think, but their Rebecca certainly made it fun for me to dream of Mandalay again. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1854. That was the day that Mary McDowell, known as the Angel of the Chicago Stockyards, was born. Mary's father brought the family to Chicago from Cincinnati after the Civil War. Her family was friends with U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes, and as a young woman, she spent a month in the White House as a guest. Mary received her college degree and worked as a teacher for a wealthy family in New York. But living and working among the wealthy was not to be the course of her life. She returned to Chicago and became a kindergarten teacher at the famed Hull House. She then became the head of the University of Chicago Settlement House in the back of the yards. The Settlement House served the diverse neighborhoods around the Chicago stockyards. The community center included a library, play lots, gymnasiums, and classrooms. Mary and her settlement house supported the rights of workers to form unions and to have safe working conditions. In 1903, Mary became the head of the Illinois chapter of the National Women's Trade Union League. The Pittsburgh Press reported on an incident that captured the spirit of Mary McDowell. The city of Chicago had a practice of using garbage to fill holes in the streets surrounding the stockyards. Mary showed up at the mayor's office with a group of women from the neighborhood and demanded, quote, "All right, we want the rest of it dumped on Lakeshore Drive. If it's good enough for the stockyards, it's good enough for the drive too." As a result, the city stopped using garbage to repair the streets.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Ash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only in the mid to low 40s. And we are having a patch of rain occurring right now, and we will have rain showers some more this morning with some sunshine during the afternoon. Highs once again in the mid-40s. Winds will be light and variable. Partly cloudy overnight with lows in the low 30s, and winds will remain light and variable. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the upper 40s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon. And now these are only partial totals from over the weekend. Confirmed cases have now jumped to 3,644 with 28 confirmed deaths. And that's a marked increase from just Friday. And also a vast undercount, and I should remind folks of that. Pollen is rated at none right here at the window of the mothership in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 33 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.3 inches. Visibility is down to 3 miles. And relative humidity is at 100%. Well, of course, it's raining. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and partly cloudy. Paris is 41 and sunny. Rome is 60 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 30 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 44 with smoke, and you would expect that. They need to keep warm and cook their food. Hong Kong is 62 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 50 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 and sunny. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit with rain and a flood advisory. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Vanessa Guerra of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Polish police said yesterday Sunday that an officer who sprayed tear gas into the face of a member of parliament during a protest probably did so because he perceived the politician as a threat. They all look the same now, don't they? An officer sprayed Barbara Nowacka, a center-left opposition lawmaker, in the face with the gas as she held out her parliamentary identity card to show him on Saturday night. The incident occurred during a protest in Warsaw, the capital, against a restrictive abortion ruling. I'm standing with my lawmaker's ID, and I get pepper spray in my face from a very close distance. I get it in my eyes, in my ear, and the people standing next to me also got hit, she said. Warsaw police spokesman acknowledged at first that the use of the pepper spray against the lawmaker showing her ID looked shocking. However, later, police published video clips on Twitter of the incident. They said Nowacka had ignored calls to move away from police, and they suggested her gesture of showing her ID to the officer could have been deemed threatening.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Steve Holland of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. White House senior advisor Jared Kushner and his team are headed to Saudi Arabia and Qatar this week for talks in a region simmering with tension after the killing of an Iranian nuclear scientist. A senior administration official said that Kushner is to meet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the Saudi city of Neom and the Emir of Qatar in that country in the coming days. Kushner will be joined by Middle East envoys Avi Berkowitz and Brian Hook and Adam Boiler, chief executive of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Kushner and his team helped negotiate normalization deals between Israel and Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Sudan since August. The official said they would like to advance more such agreements before Trump hands power to President-elect Joe Biden on January 20th. Oh, you mean sabotage it? U.S. officials believe enticing Saudi Arabia into a deal with Israel would prompt other Arab nations to follow suit, but the Saudis do not appear to be on the brink of reaching such a landmark deal, and officials in recent weeks have been focusing on other countries, with concerns about Iran's regional influence a uniting factor. Kushner's trip comes after the killing on Friday of Mohsen Farizadeh in Tehran by unidentified assailants. Western and Israeli governments believe the scientist was the architect of a secret Iranian nuclear weapons program that really wasn't in force since 2013. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.